All right. Yeah, I don't know if I need to share this or not. All right. So the basic idea here is we've been talking about this for a while, and I'm hoping maybe if we just sort of, knuckle down and work on this right now, we can make some progress. So the issue is the volume driver API is not completely clear, um, and we'd like to fix that. So that's the issue. Um, so a couple of things. So no, Eric's got some strong opinions on this, and he's got to leave in about 45 minutes. So um, I want to make sure he gets some input. So the setup is we've got the interface classes um, that describe some of the driver functionality, or I guess all of it. And those are used in some tests that actually, I think they're the compliance tests that are in Tox INI. So if you go and look, um, they actually look at the drivers to make sure that they implement the interface functions, um, which is nice from our point of view, but it's not real helpful for people writing the drivers. And then I've noticed the right for the interface in the interface class, we've got some documentation, but we also have documentation in the driver subclasses. Um, and I think we need to decide where the documentation should live so here's what I see is we want the interface class so that we can run the compliance tests to make sure the drivers have actually implemented the functions that we expect. So we definitely want that. On the other hand, I think people writing drivers don't really look at the interface because they use the classes that they inherit from and look at the documentation there. So I'm wondering whether we should have no documentation in interface classes or have pointers to where to look. I'm not sure exactly what to do there. Um, but let me give you some specific. I've got too many windows open again. Okay. All right. I guess let's start it this way. So if somebody's going to write a driver, I imagine they might go to that document that's on line 264 in the Etherpad. And then that has documentation from the base driver interface. Actually,
I mean, that page is actually really quite useful. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, and it does seem to be reasonably up to date.
Yeah.
I mean, it's even got the snapshot in there, so someone's been updating it.
All right, so I guess we were just looking at this yesterday. Is that still accurate with our respect to our core functionality?
I think so. I think that matches what's on the support matrix.
So yesterday we mentioned volume migration.
That's host-assisted volume migration is the core functionality.
Right.
So it's not really relevant to Cinder, though, is it? Because that's Nova based.
Yeah, so we added some items here that were host assisted. Should they be listed here as well? Just looking at the notes we took on the matrix review yesterday. Because we had revert to snapshot.
Yes.
And volume migration look like the two that aren't listed here.
Revert to snapshot shouldn't really be a core feature.
All right, so we got another Etherpad we can take notes on.
So many Etherpads.
Luckily, they're free.
Luckily, that would help if all my tabs would actually load them. We've got so many tabs open.
All right, and then I guess let me put a link to the support matrix from yesterday. All right, so then first question is just with core functionality. All right, so looking at So yesterday we were looking at create image from volume. Most of the drivers are using the volume utils to upload the volume.
Sorry, I got distracted a bit, but it seems like we're looking at which features are core functionality and which shouldn't be. But I think probably the original intention of this, um, of clarifying the volume driver API, was not around that. I think it was basically properly define what each method expects and what it's going to return and what it actually should be doing
Okay.
and assumptions and things like that.
Yes, that's a good point.
Because that is what I feel like we've been having most problems around. I'm a driver developer. I go here, I read this. I have no idea. The first one, attach volume. Lets the driver know Nova has attached the volume to an instance. Awesome. What am I supposed to do here? What is the purpose? Do I have to do something? Then you go to other drivers and whatever they are doing, you try to figure out, extrapolate, and do something. And I think that's the problem that Eric has been trying to improve for a long time.
Okay, well, that's good. Let's start right there then. So let's rewrite this. All right, so I guess, all right, let's focus on getting a description of what these functions do now, and then we can figure out where this stuff lives later. So I think I've gone about this. Okay. All right, so then, right, with the, right, so we got the context is going to be a Cinder context object. We got the volume would be a Cinder volume object.
Well, for one thing, we shouldn't be saying lets the driver know that Nova has attached it because it might not even be Nova.
Okay. All right, let's go to line 5 and
I mean, it could be ironic or some non-OpenStack service. I don't know what we want to say there exactly, but we probably don't want to make it Nova specific. But to fix that, what is the actual point of this call? This is to just record that the attachment has been done by whoever's trying to consume the volume.
I don't really know what's how would I say, the original purpose of calling a driver to let them know about this. But the original call comes from OS dash attach that happens in the old attach API.
Yeah, so this is called from attachment update. That updates or finalizes an attachment. I don't really know why we are calling to driver for this either.
That's why it's problematic when a vendor reads this. Does any driver actually implement this?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what they do, but not many. So it's implemented by SolidFire and one other Fusion storage driver are the only drivers that actually do this.
Well, we can always document in case that this call is made so that the driver can store the information if as metadata in the backend if it wants to, just so that then if there's a problem, they can locate it easily or whatever.
I don't know. This is kind of screaming to me that we should look at what these two drivers do and see if we should even have this call.
That is what they are doing. They are basically time stamping when it was attached. They are setting in some metadata with the instance ID. They are recording it and things like that.
Why do we want to do any of that?
I would say, I don't know.
And how does that even work with multi-attach?
It will probably override.
Yeah, it
No
probably
use.
does. We should probably see if we could just get rid of this.
So that I think I put a line 15 in the volume driver Etherpad. That's the implementation that everyone's using if they don't implement it themselves. Is that right?
Sounds right.
So basically, so for most drivers, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most drivers don't care where the instance
Yeah.
where a volume is attached.
Sorry, guys. This is about attach volume method, right?
Yes.
So what I can see is that there is something that can be done also on the back end. So that's gonna be driver specific that tells the backend to expose the volume in the first place.
No,
Right.
this is after all that. So the code path is basically whoever wants to connect to a volume. I'm going to use Nova because it's easier for me, but can be anything else. So Nova tells Cinder, please, I want to use this volume. We have two different APIs. But in both, you basically map, export your volume, then Nova would go to SBreak, tell use this, and then Nova comes back to Cinder and say, okay, now I'm really using the volume. Before I told you I was going to use it, give me permissions, but now I can confirm that the instance is using it, and that is this method, attach volume. For Cinder, it changes some fields in the database, but for the driver, in most cases, they don't care, whatever. Cinder is the one responsible for everything. So it's Cinder problem. But other drivers seems to be storing metadata in the backend. For example, the instant UUID, when it's completed, they say, okay, this volume is being used here, and they store it there. Whether it's useful or not, but using it, I don't know. But that is what they seem to be doing.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, I see. Yeah, so I see. I think there's many drivers that don't even use it.
I suspect
got
it's John's fault.
Yeah, this was done very early on in one driver, I think.
Yeah, it'll be because the SolidFire driver did it, and then it probably got when it forked out of Nova. John probably thought it was a good idea to do this. But it looks like it's redundant now. Just looking at SolidFire's way of doing it.
And for me, it's not only redundant, but it seems that it got broken, like Eric said, with I think it was Eric, with multi-attach. You know, they probably don't support it.
I mean, now, SolidFire in the support matrix claim they support multi-attach, but it's going to break this piece of code because Eric's right. It's going to overwrite. It's not a list.
Yeah.
I can't even work out what it's doing in the SolidFire driver at the moment. I'm wondering whether it's a feature of the architecture of SolidFire because they use multiple nodes.
I don't think this is used anywhere else. Like this is more to control like metadata only. This to like have the information also in the storage side, but this is not like quite use it anywhere else in code or even in like when we are like seeing operators they are not relying on this information. Like, so yeah, I don't think this is really important for the SolidFire driver, but yeah, this was probably written at the very beginning before like we support multi-attach and all this kind of stuff.
So you think it would be kind of safe to just add a release note and remove the support in your driver?
I think we can. I don't think it's a problem. Removing this one, clearly we can see a error with multi-attach here that we could we could just fix this problem and creating more references here for the multi-attach as well, or like we could remove this entirely. I don't have like a strong opinion on this one, but I believe this is part of like the API definition. I don't know I don't know if you folks agree, but we are kind of trying to redefine stuff here, or we are just like trying to understand like if we have the necessary documentation for vendors to start to like develop their drivers.
Well, the initial idea was to improve the documentation provided to vendors so that they actually understand the interface, and we have a very clear interface, and we can definitely tell a vendor, hey, your driver is working incorrectly. We are not going to change Cinder because you haven't followed the interface that has been defined. But
Mhm.
we got sidetracked when we were talking about this one because it
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
like it's not useful, and maybe instead of documenting it, which we were having trouble explaining why this would be useful for a driver,
Okay. Yeah,
we may
yeah,
just remove it.
yeah.
It would be easier to remove it than to try
Yeah,
and
for sure.
fix it for one or two really edge cases.
Yeah, I can't see any like problem associated with removing this one. It's just we are not going to make any calls to this metadata later. So in fact, this can cause more problems than
But
helping us with. But yeah, I believe this can be
Fernando,
removed. I don't have. Okay, go ahead.
could
Sorry.
your sorry, yeah, could your users be actually used to locate volumes in any way, or that's highly unlikely? Could they go to your web interface and just
Yeah.
search
This is going
using
to
the
be visible.
UUID of the instance?
Yeah. This would be the purpose of this change. Like they can go to UI, get like in the volume section you can see like the list of metadata, so you can see like the volume that is attached to, and like other stuff like volume UID, and yeah, I don't remember all the keys right now, but yeah, this was exactly the idea when this was developed, but. And
This
to be honest, I don't know if like we have customers that like are currently relying on that. This might be a problem because like we make that decision to remove it, but I would need to first at least like get others' opinions, see if this is used by in any way, like maybe some side script or something. Like yeah.
I mean, if anyone is using it, I think it's going to be SolidFire customers only, because the
Yeah.
way I'm reading this, and certainly the way they've implemented it in the SolidFire driver, it feels to me like this is an artifact of the multi-node architecture of SolidFire. This is what it feels like to me. And when you're doing a retype, particularly, and potentially moving the volume from one node in a SolidFire cluster to another, and you're having to tell SolidFire to reattach it or give information about which nodes it's attaching to. It feels a bit weird to me the way it's been written. And I can't remember the SolidFire architecture as well as I should, to be honest.
Yeah, but even like in as Solidifier, it's really a multi-node architecture, but like we rely on a single proxy for so it's kind of like a transparent to customers. They don't even see like in each volume in each node the volumes are placed. So no, I don't believe this is quite the reason they did something
I'm not even
here.
sure. I'm not even sure Fusion Store uses it. I think they've got their own API called API endpoint called attach volume that we're getting confused with. I'm not even sure that Fusion Store uses this.
Yeah, folks. Really, like I don't have a strong opinions to keep this one. It's just we can ensure. I can't ensure right now that like customers are not like relying on this in any way. I don't think this is really important for customers to know like in the exactly like the exactly volume. Sorry, the exactly instance that is attached to a volume, because this information is available in Cinder. They could use the Cinder APIs to get the information. So, uh, yeah,
I mean,
uh,
maybe it's worth putting a release note in for Yoga that it's deprecated and remove it in Z.
yeah. This is a possibility. Yeah, if we decide that this call is going to be deprecated, yeah, we definitely can do that.
I'm not saying the call would, I mean, in the SolidFire driver. Just take it out of the SolidFire driver, deprecate it from that, so that anyone who's using it gets a warning.
Mm-hmm.
They're releasing in advance that information, if they're using it, they should look elsewhere for it.
Okay, yeah. So probably that should be an action item for me to do that during the next release. And yes, I will talk to some people that are more close to the operators, and if we can deprecate as add like action item to deprecate, but we'll also talk to a few guys inside NetApp and see if there is like I went back to you if we identified like that this shouldn't be deprecated, or at least someone is really using this, but really I don't think so. I think this is more like a yeah, this does more like to use the features that are available in SolidFire than like providing anything much specific to customers.
Okay. Yeah, so from your perspective, it's just these attributes that are being set wouldn't be set anymore.
Yeah, we could just
Back
do
there.
that. If SolidFire is the only driver that's currently using this, and I almost sure that this isn't like a we are not like customers are not like operators are not making use of these attributes, so I believe they can be safely removed. I will talk to some guys that are more close to the operators and see their and get their opinion. But yeah, I really I believe that this can be removed.
So,
And if I understood correctly, the idea would be to have action item for including a release note saying that is going to be deprecated, right, on the next versions. Is that what you suggested, Simon?
Yeah, I think that's probably the good thing to do is mark that as a deprecation
Yeah.
in,
Okay.
in yoga, and warn that it will be removed in the Z cycle.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, I had a quick look. I can't even see it being used anywhere other than SolidFire. Even the Fusion Store drive, I don't think uses it.
okay. Instead of going alphabetically, let's take a quick look at detach volume, because I think that's probably right a counterpart to this.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Probably.
We do the same in SolidFire. Yeah, we just
Yeah.
remove the attributes. We added.
Okay, so probably. All right, so we'll see what happens with attach volume, and then we'll do the same thing with detach volume.
Okay.
Well, for detached volume, it says the attachment info is optional. What's going on with that parameter? Like, what do you do if it's blank versus specified?
I don't think so. Like, I really don't know. Like, at least in Solidifier, we don't use the parameter, so it's going to be
Yeah,
uneven
as
if
far as
we.
I can see, sorry,
Yeah.
as far as I can see, no driver uses that parameter.
Well, we should deprecate it or explain it or something.
Well, if we are planning to remove the attached volume and detached volume calls to the driver directly, maybe we can wait to see if we are just deprecating it, right? And removing it.
Okay. Well, removing stuff's a lot easier than rewriting the documentation, so that's a big plus.
It looks to me like only Daterra are using detach. Oh, and SolidFire as well. Interestingly, 3PAR claimed that they updated the detach volume attachment support, but it's actually not in there. So maybe they removed that, mentioning it.
The Daterra driver in Icecast, it doesn't actually do anything. It has a pass in the code.
Yeah, I don't understand what the 3PAR is. They've got a reference to it in their release notes, but it's actually never used anywhere by the looks of it.
Okay.
So again, it's SolidFire and what they're doing with it. Yeah, and this is a John thing. You just see it, can't you?
Well, this is good. So if it turns out SolidFire's not really using the attach volume info, then they won't mind if it gets removed later on either. So
Yeah, all the detach.
yeah, we should be good. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like timestamps. And again, it's going to break when it comes to multi-attach.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, all it's doing is updating some metadata, and it's not used by anyone. I'm not even sure that metadata is going to be exposed anywhere other than in the database.
Okay. All right, so the next one alphabetically was check for setup error. That seems fairly clear.
The second part about driver initialization must be complete by the time this returns could probably be worded better. I guess what it's trying to say is that this is the last method that we call to initialize everything.
Yeah, I think that's what it's trying to say. That that they can, if they want, split the initialization between do setup and check for setup errors.
Well, I'm sorry, Eric. How were you gonna? You had suggested a better way to say what we're after here.
Well, I haven't come up with a better one. I was just saying that what's written currently is kind of awkward sounding. I mean, it says driver initialization must be complete by the time this returns, like it's some other thing happening somewhere, but it's not. Like this is just the call that does that.
Oh, I see. So it's basically this is your. Oh,
And so this one, we'll have to look at this one and do setup. It's kind of strange because I guess there was a concept at some point maybe of a call to do some setup and then a call to check to make sure everything is how you want it. But in practice, we just call do setup and then check for setup error. And people can kind of do whatever they want in either one. And it doesn't really matter, practically speaking, which method they do it in. Which means we probably should really only have one method, but that's been like that forever.
Yeah. I'm just looking at our driver and we just do a pass on it because it's not relevant to us. Because it's checking for some password and some private key.
yeah, you're right. It makes it sound like it's a long time after do setup was called. This thing gets called, and that's not necessarily the case.
And having two of them is weird too, because if you look at the RBD driver and check for setup error, which is the second one that's called, is the one that goes to check and see if you actually have the required Python libraries installed. After it's already gone and
Too late at that point.
tried to do some other stuff. Yeah, it's kind of doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's just awesome about face, that is.
I've always thought it was a little odd that this happened after do setup because it seems like check for setup error is where like all the config options and stuff should be checked.
I think that's been the convention in general, just because it kind of sounds like the right place to do that.
Yeah.
There's a comment in the 3-port code where they just pass it and they say setup errors are already checked in do setup, so just don't bother with this.
Yeah, which would make sense.
Nothing to see.
So should we? I was going to suggest should we take an action to actually remove this from the API and change the drivers so that they at the end of the do setup they call their own check for setup error. That's it. So that we start cleaning our interface.
Trying to think if there's any situation where you would want these two things separate.
It's hard to see why you would.
Yeah, because
I'm also not too sure about how check for setup error says raises volume backend API exception. The drivers raise all kind of different errors in there. And I'm not sure that I don't know. I'm not sure that's accurate. because I don't think the manager raises that.
Yeah, I guess the thing to do would be to just go ahead and try to move, if any drivers actually use check for setup error, we could do what Gorka said, move the code into the do setup. And if whoever's doing that comes across a situation where there's something weird, then we'd know we probably can't remove this thing. But otherwise, it seems to make sense to go ahead and remove it and just say use do setup only.
So how do we get this message out to all the vendor, the driver maintainers? Because there's a lot of drivers out there that don't have maintainers anymore, really. And if they're using this, how are we going? They're just going to break in yoga.
Well, no, we can just make the change ourselves because you just have to check if they're calling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can try to do the change. If we come across one where there's something problematic and it's not clear how to do it, then we'll know that we got a problem. Otherwise, we've occasionally done driver refactors where we've done something like this and just we've made the changes. Okay.
Oh, interesting. I wonder, so the function that calls check for setup is init host. I wonder if that's why it was host assisted in the documentation, the things where I'm like, why is it called host assisted? I've never noticed that we're considering each driver that's initialized as a host. Anyway.
Well, a host in that context is referring to where a service is running and potentially a service that forked some processes for different backends.
Right. Anyway.
So the documentation for clone image needs to explain this Boolean.
Hmm. It's another one of those that doesn't seem to be used by many drivers at all, even though it's supposed to be.
The clone image return thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually
that's
vital for the Ceph driver. I'm not sure who else uses it.
I think it's anyone who's using NFS, so GPFS and NFS and data on tap and people like that. Seems to me, guys using it. But
Yeah, I mean, it's going to show up whenever you can somehow do something more efficient than shoveling all the data through the volume service.
the reason why there are not many drivers and for why for RBD it can be done is because this relies on the native backends in Glance. And RBD is native in Nova, Glance, Cinder. So if you're using the same cluster in both Cinder and Glance, you can do a clone directly. But most vendors don't have a native Glance driver, so they cannot benefit from this.
Looks like this is only implemented for RBD and NetApp NFS.
But this will be useful if we do it right when using the Cinder backend for Glance, right? For potentially more drivers.
No, I think that's a different path. After this check fails, then after that we do that check. Like we try that path.
Well, I'm not talking about what we do now. I'm talking about what we could do if we wanted to optimize it.
Yeah, but what he's saying is that the optimization takes a different path. Instead of calling this method, it uses a clone image volume. Like,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Gorka, are you proposing we put all of these parameter details in this document?
yeah, well, in the interface, which I think it's the one that gets pulled by that page, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I think we should still improve them a little bit because I'm looking at them and thinking from a vendor's perspective, image location basically doesn't help me much with the information it provides. And it doesn't even mention that it can be empty. Is there any documentation in Glance where it specifies things like from the image metadata, such as this format and other keys that may be present in the metadata?
I don't know because it depends on, you have to have the locations exposed in order for this that's why it could be none. So you don't even
No,
know.
but the image metadata would be exposed anyway, right? The image metadata is not the location.
Oh, right. Okay.
So what I'm wondering is if there is a Glance page in the documentation where it says, yep, in the metadata, these are common keys. You will find this format, you will find this other key, or something like that.
Yeah.
I understand that image metadata and image properties are different things.
Well, they're basically the same thing.
Okay, so I found an image, useful image properties page in Glance. Rocky. I don't know if there's anything newer.
Yeah, that it should be in the latest also.
Because it doesn't have the disk format.
No, it's probably the best thing is going to be.
Ryan, that page is, yeah, probably the best one because, for example, we have the description of locations there.
Yeah, I think it gives you everything really, and then it's got the little thing at the bottom that there can be arbitrary other stuff too. So I guess that's probably not important for drivers. Yeah, and I don't know that the location format is actually documented anywhere. I guess because in the general case, you don't want people monkeying with those things. it's really only useful if you're, got that, if you're using RBD glance store and the RBD Cinder driver.
But maybe we should mention that, right? Because this can be confusing for people, and if they can see clearly this is very specific for some drivers, they just skip it altogether and they move on.
Yeah. All right, so
Okay, this is maybe a stupid question, but the parameters for clone image should be the same across all the classes, correct?
In theory, yes.
Okay, because for the base VD clone image parameters are different than the parameters in the other classes.
Well, with this weird theory of the driver classes, presumably drivers that do this are going to use clonable image VD anyway and override base VD. So the base VD one might not actually matter.
Okay.
I don't know. We really got to untangle this whole class hierarchy thing at some point. It's kind of a nightmare.
I'll make note of it and let somebody smarter than me figure out what it means.
It's not just the context parameter; it's also the image ID parameter.
Correct.
I feel like I feel like I might have read a bug about this years ago. It sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
Okay. Um, yes, let's move along to copy image to volume.
We're going to go happy hour at half past the hour and do this for another 15, or give happy hour a miss.
Oh, are we over?
Yeah, oh yeah, we're well over that. I think.
I thought the happy hour is at 1600.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
I'm hoping so.
Oh yeah, you're right. My fault.
Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get through the C's
Yeah.
before happy hour. Though there's a lot of C's. Okay, so copy image to volume.